There's a good chance you've got an electrolyte powder sitting in your kitchen right now. People bought it this summer because the heat felt different, and because everyone kept saying that sweating this much has to be dangerous. For most people, that's simply not how it works. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly when your body actually needs electrolytes, and when plain water was doing the job the whole time. There's also a 20-second test coming up, one you can run on yourself after your next workout. Electrolyte drinks are everywhere this summer. Powders, sachets, hydration waters, all lined up next to the regular bottled water, usually priced about 3 times higher. The marketing logic is easy to follow. Heat feels dangerous, so anything that promises protection feels worth buying. Here's something I want you to check for yourself. Think about your last hard workout, or a long day outside in the heat. When your skin or your clothes dried afterward, was there a white, chalky mark left behind? Hold on to that answer. We'll come back to it soon, because it actually tells you something useful. Let's start with the actual science, because the numbers here are more interesting than the marketing. On average, sweat contains around 40 millimoles of sodium per liter. But that average hides a huge range. Some people lose as little as 10, and others lose closer to 90. People at the high end of that range are genuinely what researchers call salty sweaters. Most of us sit somewhere in the middle, and that middle range is where plain water usually covers everything you need. Here's why sweat is salty in the first place. When it's produced, it actually starts out fairly close to your blood in composition. As it travels through the sweat duct on its way to your skin, your body reabsorbs some of that sodium back into itself. When you sweat faster, there's simply less time for that reabsorption to happen. And that's the moment sweat starts tasting saltier. It's a mechanical detail of how your glands work, and it explains a lot without needing a scary story attached to it. Sodium isn't the only thing you lose either. Sweat also carries potassium, usually a few hundred milligrams per liter, and a small amount of magnesium. But sodium is still the one that moves the most fluid, so it's the one worth paying attention to first. So here's the practical question. When does this actually turn into something you need to manage? Under about an hour of activity on a normal day, plain water is genuinely enough for almost everyone. Once you're past 60 to 90 minutes, especially in real heat with heavy sweating involved, the situation changes, and that's where electrolytes start earning their place. And this isn't only about workouts. Sitting outside for hours, working in a hot kitchen, or standing in direct sun all day counts as heat exposure too, even without a single squat. Okay. Here's the test I promised you earlier. The next time you sweat heavily, let your skin or your clothes dry naturally afterward, and take a look at what's left behind. If you see white, chalky marks, especially somewhere like your back, your hairline, or your hat, that's actual salt, and it happening regularly is a real sign you're on the saltier end of that range. There's a second sign worth checking, and it's just as simple. Look at your urine color after activity. Pale yellow generally means you're doing fine. Dark yellow means your body wants more fluid, though not necessarily electrolytes just yet. I'm genuinely curious which group you fall into. Tell me in the comments whether you notice that white residue or not, because I'd like to know how common this actually is among people watching. Since we're already talking about this, let's clear up something people genuinely believe about coconut water. It does have a decent amount of potassium, which is useful, but its sodium content is quite low, well below what heavy sweating and heat actually costs you. It's a perfectly reasonable drink to enjoy. It's just being sold as something it isn't really built to do. To actually match your sodium losses in heat with coconut water alone, you'd realistically need somewhere around 10 to 20 cups. At that point, you've also added far more natural sugar than you probably intended to drink in one sitting. Now here's the part almost nobody talks about, and I think it matters more than the electrolyte hype does. Drinking large amounts of plain water during long heat exposure can actually be more dangerous than not drinking enough. It's called hyponatremia, and it happens when the sodium level in your blood drops too low because you've replaced fluid without replacing anything else in it. In one well-known study of Boston Marathon runners, 13% of them developed it, almost always with the same pattern behind it: long duration, hot conditions, and large volumes of plain water with nothing else added. So the goal was never just drinking as much as possible. The actual goal is matching what you drink to what your body is genuinely losing. One more piece worth knowing before we wrap this up. Thirst is a real signal from your body, but it's a delayed one. And by the time you feel it, you're usually already a little behind on fluid. This matters a lot if you're training hard or spending hours outside in real heat. On an average day, running errands or working indoors, it matters far less than people assume. All right, here's something you can actually use today, not just information to file away. If you land in that second group, the one that genuinely needs electrolytes, you don't need a branded powder to fix it. Take 1 liter of water, add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and squeeze in the juice of half a lemon. That's your sodium and your potassium covered in under a minute. If you're training longer than an hour, stir in a tablespoon of honey as well. That gives you a bit of natural sugar, which actually helps your body absorb the fluid faster, not just extra calories for no reason. This costs a fraction of what a bottle of sports drink costs. It keeps in the fridge for a few days, and you control exactly what goes into it. If that just saved you a summer of buying overpriced bottles, hit like, so more people trying to figure this out actually see it. So, let's bring this together into something simple you can actually use. Under an hour, on a normal day, water covers what you need. Past 60 to 90 minutes in real heat with heavy sweating, that lemon and salt mix earns its place. And the fastest way to know which one applies to you isn't a brand or an ad. It's the white residue on your skin and the color of your urine after you're done. So, back to that white residue we talked about earlier. You already know exactly what it means now, exactly what to do with that information, and exactly what to mix up in your own kitchen instead of buying it. In the next video, we'll go further into food-based hydration, the fruits and vegetables that actually pull their weight in summer heat, and where the hype outruns the science there too. If you've got a question about your own hydration or your own workouts, drop it in the comments and I'll pick some of them to answer properly in that next video. And while you're there, tell me how you personally get through the heat this summer. I read all of it and it genuinely shapes what we cover next. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I'm Sophia, and I'll see you in the next one.